You're listening to Artistic Finance, show 207. On today's show, we talk with Jessica Ryan, founder of Broadway Unlocked and CEO of Altogether Now, a production company for scalable in-person and digital live experiences. We discuss Broadway's unhealthy producing model, which includes the pricing, the marketing, and cost disease. We discuss Cats the Jellicle Ball, holding space for performing arts and capitalism, and being a theater person and teaching yourself business and business terminology. Now, this episode is not an advertisement for Missouri State University or their Department of Theater and Dance. As you're listening, you might think that, but it just so happened that we both graduated from that program, and it's not every day that you meet such like-minded people from your alma mater. Links to everything we talk about are in the show notes. Now, we talked about a lot, so I didn't put links to everything, but there's certainly a lot of them, and you can find those at artisticfinance.com/207. Without further ado, let's get to the show.
You are listening to Artistic Finance, where we help creatives learn about the business of show business.
Welcome and thank you for listening. I am your host, Ethan Steimel, broadcasting out of Lake St. Louis, Missouri. We are recording this on July 31st, 2026, and the news, very specific, local to Lake St. Louis, is that it's raining and that our toddler had a meltdown this morning. So that is like uber-specific news that I don't know how much it impacts the rest of the world. But today, we are welcoming Jess Ryan to the show. Welcome, Jess, and where are you broadcasting out of?
Oh, hello. I am coming to you today from Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, where I am on vacation at the moment.
Oh my gosh, you joined me on vacation? Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, of course. We met like what, 2 days ago?
It's been a time has traveled.
It's been a week?
What?
Oh,
It's
got
been a
it.
week. It's been 2 weeks. Well, okay, I keep saying like news. Like in my notes, I have the news that like Andrew Lloyd Webber says Broadway is dying. And so in my brain, that's the news, but it's now like 2 or 3 weeks old that he said that.
That's right. That's
So,
right. There's new news. Glenn, what's his name from Once passed away. That's the news now.
Glenn, what's his name?
I forgot his last name. Hansard? Is that his last name? I think it's Hansard.
Hansard. Yes. You're
Yeah.
right.
Okay, good.
Glenn Hansard. Glenn Hansard passed
It's very
away.
sad. So sad.
It is. And 56, which like passed away at 56, which again, I swear I bring up my age every week on the show. So people are like, Ethan, we get it. You're 38. All right. So I'm 38, Jess. And as I'm aging gracefully, 56 sounds so young to me.
Oh, it's so young. I know.
Because we had a lighting designer pass away earlier this year, Mark McCullough, and he was 63, I think. But then I was like, 63 is too young. They're too young to have.
I know.
You know, in our entertainment career, at least for designers, right?
Yeah. Who work their whole lives.
Yeah, we work into the 80s and 90s. So like 63, it's like he had 30 good years of work ahead of him.
Yeah, totally.
But that's all right. Sending sunbeams down from above. Okay, Jess. So we met through LinkedIn. We actually, this is TMI for everybody, but we are alumni of Missouri State University or Southwest Missouri State University.
Go Bears. Go Bears.
Go Bears. Go Bears. And this is just a side tangent too of that. I went to undergrad at Missouri State University. And then I went to grad school at Southern Methodist University. And I would argue that Southern Methodist University has a stronger theater program and on a higher caliber. Nobody hurt me for this statement that I just made. But I will say that getting out into the world, I just did a show with Deidre Goodwin down at Alabama Shakespeare Festival.
She's amazing.
Deidre, a Missouri State a Bear alumni, and then also the automation programmer there was a Missouri alumni. And so I have worked with more Missouri State theater people in my professional career than I have Southern Methodist University people.
Oh, wow.
Why am I bringing this up? I don't know, but you and I, of the same institution, didn't graduate at the same time period, but we're both still working in the industry. Oh, this is another side note I have. So I went to grad school where people are very much more focused in their entertainment degree, and I would argue that the classmates that I had there, less of them are still in the arts industry.
Interesting.
Than the Missouri State students who went to the like state school or whatever.
Very interesting.
I'm just so happy to run into people who went to my same undergrad, because I'm like, look, we're doing the thing. We like went out and we're working. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I think, and didn't I think you subscribed to my Substack, and then I always go looking, you know what I mean, to see who someone is, because I'm so interested in who is interested in the things that I'm like posting. And then I was like, wait, how do we not know each other?
Exactly. I know it's like we have like 45 mutual connections.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, we work in the same industry in the same area. Because okay, you said you're in Missouri right now, but you're based out of where?
New York City most of the year. I spent a couple months in LA as well.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. So you're in the entertainment capitals of the world.
Correct. Yes.
And so it's like
just not currently.
just except for this moment, which is sort of beautiful. Yeah, I did not plan to be. I've hijacked this into a Missouri themed episode.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know why. But we will talk about Broadway, which is obviously not Missouri based per se.
Not yet.
We will get to talking about Broadway. But first, Jess, who are you? What do you do? What's your career? What's going on with you?
My name is Jessica Ryan. I always say, a recovering polite Midwesterner. Even though I've realized this September, I will have lived in New York City as long as I lived in Missouri, which is crazy. 23 years in New York in September. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm still recovering Midwesterner anymore. I might actually just be a New Yorker, you know? I am a friend and a sister and a theater maker and a lover of books and being on the fronts of boats on Lake of the Ozarks, speeding across the water. That's like a good summation of a lot of the parts of me that make me me. And I'm in the entertainment industry and own a couple of businesses that are hopefully driving forward the future of culture and arts in the United States and around the world.
That's great. And we will talk about that. But also, you mentioned to me when we were talking previously that you directed a show at Tent Theater. Is that right?
Many. So, yeah. I started as an actor. I have a BFA in musical theater. I left SMS at the time, but we'll say MSU. Let's say MSU for familiarity and branding for the rest of this podcast. I left MSU, went to New York right afterwards as an actor, and very quickly got an agent and got cast in a production of Mac and Mabel at Goodspeed Opera House that was being basically trialed to come back into Broadway. So Jerry Herman was with us the whole time. And I and my friend Zach were the only two like young principal leads, because everybody in that show is a little older. And I did that show with Donna McKechnie, who was the original Cassie in A Chorus Line, and Christiane Knoll, who's an incredible actor and singer. And I understudied Donna McKechnie. So it was like my first job right out of school. And she got sick and I went on for 2 weeks. So I only mention that to say, like, I kind of tumbled out of MSU and into this like real high-speed, New York-driven acting career. But I quickly, through a bunch of interesting stories I'll tell you some other time, ended up leaving my agent and going out on my own, which was like a lot harder than, it sounds dumb, but harder than going to, getting booked into appointments. And I was like, I didn't do anything different, but like, I'm not getting all these I was just like getting callback after callback after callback with my agent. So I started making my own work, and that sort of led to MSU giving me my first choreography job, actually, we have a summer professional theater, right? And let me tell you something. I don't know about you, because you've worked back there too. If you had asked me when I left school if I would ever return to Springfield, Missouri, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. I will never come back to Springfield. But then they gave me my first choreography job. And then MSU gave me my first directing job like 3-4 years later with Dogfight. So I choreographed 42nd Street in the summer. And then I directed Dogfight during the main season because a professor had left or something like that. And then I was like, I really like doing this. And began directing in New York more and more. Sometimes directing choreographing because I was a dancer in my very, very first life. Hence the Donna McKechnie of it all. And then, because I don't know, I just like having 9,000 things on my plate. I created this crazy concert in 2013 in New York it was a benefit concert for survivors of violence. And I was like, I want it to be bigger and I want to raise more money and I want to like widen the conversation. I was like, why don't we live stream this? And that was the very beginning of like my life as an entrepreneur and a business owner and a pioneer and a visionary, I think, of where the theater could move as our increasingly technological age progressed.
Well, and you streamed before COVID, and I feel like anybody that did it before COVID, then it's like, oh, you were really doing it. Like you
Yeah. Yeah. I've come to understand over the last 6 years of like my production company and working with all these people that work in live broadcasts that work for me, that it was like us and churches in 2013. Like truly, churches were on the forefront, the earliest forefront of this idea that you could widen a live experience out to digital audience members, which I think is so interesting.
Yeah, I have a friend who's very much into computers, works for like, I don't need to dox them, but I don't know, PepsiCo or like big chain things like that. Like he's really good at his job. He worked for the Missouri government for a long time, doing like so much computer stuff. Anyway, but when we were in high school, he was Catholic, and one of his jobs was doing the like the weekly Catholic sermons to broadcast to people that couldn't make it to the church.
Yeah.
So yes, and I think at that time it was like on videotape or CDs. So
sure.
and they would publish it like on a TV somewhere so you could watch it live or something. But yes, they were on the forefront, and they are. And also, like, I'm a lighting designer, so these churches that have a lot of money from the heavens above, yeah, they have the technology.
And they invested in it, right? And it made their businesses grow, sorry, I'm not much of a church person, but their businesses. I think it's really cool. Also, I'm bookmarking it. By the end of this conversation, we make sure we talk some shop about lighting for stage and lighting for camera and lighting for both.
We don't have enough time for that. We do not have enough time. I'll just merely comment that if you're going to light something for the camera after having lit it for the stage, that you gotta get a whole team, you gotta make a whole adjustment. Like yeah, that's a whole. I also love that you mentioned Jerry Herman and Mac and Mabel, just because, little known fact. So I grew up my whole life thinking, oh, Jerry Herman, Hello Dolly, blah blah blah, crazy artist, and he absolutely is. Like, wrote so many musicals that everybody would know, but majority of his life he was actually like in real estate.
I didn't know that.
All I'm saying is we're artsy people, but like a lot of us that are artsy are not completely separated from the capitalist structure of like stuff. And I don't think that it's a problem. It's like Andrew Lloyd Webber, right? Everybody knows him, but it's like he is like the billionaire of billionaires amongst us. So anyway, but I just love that, because when I think Jerry Herman now, I do think Hello Dolly, but I also think
real estate.
There is a real estate mogul in the making.
That really tracks with the little bit that I listened to your podcast to get ready for this inside the week we've known each other, where I didn't realize the reason you had started this podcast. And I love the idea, and I think it's becoming increasingly easier and more accepted to hold space as an artist, as an entrepreneur. And like, look, I'm sure you're similar. I don't think any artist could be just purely gung-ho, let's make as much profit as we can, because that often comes at the expense of a lot of other people. But got a complicated relationship with capitalism, but I mean, we learn in therapy, you can hold space for many things, right? Why can't we hold space for our right and left sides of our brains?
100%. And where that's coming to a head right now in this moment is that AI, I'm prepping all these AI episodes, and I don't need people jumping down my throat if I mention AI, because it's like, we can have AI and we can have ethics and we can have theater and we can have art. Like, we can have all these things. Yes, I'm not saying go AI, win the world. But we have to be able to, yes, hold space for multiple things.
Although, have you thought, I have a question for you, because this is something I contemplate a lot. What if AI is the thing that can't be both? There's a pretty significant, and I use AI for many specific tasks. However, there's a pretty good argument that it is just at its base anti-human, and that the money flowing into the investment there is no other reason for it other than to maximize profit, and by getting rid of labor costs. What if? Have you ever thought about that? What if it can't be both? I don't know. I'm not convinced, but
I don't. I hear you. But I would argue that everything is made for a profit.
Mm.
Everything is made for a profit. Like if it's not profitable in our society, it's sort of thrown away to the garbage. Because education, right? It's like education is sort of like, why do we not fund education as much as like a good society really needs it to be? And the reason is like it doesn't make the money. It's sort of like the purpose is to like generate worker bees. Anyway, so I hear you. It might be anti-human, but I also, when I replace AI in my head with machine learning, it is just a machine, and yes, it is made to generate profit. But I've been called short-sighted and sweet and innocent.
Spicy.
I just don't know how AI could become a lighting designer. People tell me that it can, and I just disagree. Theater is about being human. You can put all the technical, like you can put an LED wall behind somebody, but it's like there is just such a human element. So we'll see. Check back in 10 years. Has AI taken my job?
We'll get back here. We'll have another conversation.
But I do want to mention, I'm so glad you mentioned like why I started this podcast, because, and this is where I'm going to discredit myself as like somebody to talk to you today, because you are so, in my brain, business savvy than me, blah, blah, blah. So my producing background is that I co-produced Christmas Carol on Broadway, right? And how did I do that? Well, okay, so like a slot for that show to be a co-producer was $250,000, right?
Yep.
And so a producer split that with somebody else. So they each
Yep.
had to bring $125,000. So then what eventually was, one of those producers reached out to me and said, hey, could you help me? Like, would you, I know your interest is sort of in the producing-ish. Would you like to raise money and see if you could join me? And then I'll include you in my bio and blah, blah, blah. So more of the story is I asked around and I got people to put in $75,000. So I earned my co-producing credit, the only one I have, by raising $75,000. And like, that's it. That's all there was. And there was no, like, had the show done well. By the way, I lost that $75,000. It went away. The show closed.
Yeah.
I lost all these people their money. Some of them might be listening to this. I apologize again for losing the money. They were all really cool about it.
Broadway, baby.
So it was in chunks of $12,500, right?
That was your minimum. Yeah.
So I think I got 6 people to put in $12,500 each. I'm not happy I lost their money, but I am proud that I like got people in the lighting who work in the industry to sort of like invest in the show.
Absolutely.
So I was really happy about that. But since that time, I've been like, we should not be doing this. We should be taking our $12,500, putting it in the S&P 500.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And doing that because, unless you're like an Andrew Lloyd Webber, in which you have the disposable income to do such a thing or to buy a theater or something like that. So I've sort of like lost that track because I'm just like finding people in our industry that have $1 million net worth is quite a challenge.
Right.
And then it sort of gets me away from like helping. Anyway, so I have guided this podcast sort of away from the producing sense in that I'm like, it's just not a avenue. Like I am interested in it and I do want to produce like my colleagues. I know so many playwrights that have great things and I want to help them produce there. So I will. So nowadays when I produce, I usually get labeled as an associate producer, which really just means I help out with whatever needs to happen to make something happen. Saying all that to say that's where I am. I'm just a lighting designer. And I just talk about this stuff. I'm open to holding space for all sorts of things. So I want to dive into that conversation. But Jess, I actually have 2 icebreaker questions that we've already broken the ice, but I want to ask these. And that is, what is a live event that you yourself like to experience as an audience member?
I love this question. And I thought, because I heard you ask it on an episode before I saw it in the document you sent me. And I was like, oh man, I have to think so hard. And then I was like, oh no, that's easy. Haunted houses. I love going to haunted houses in October. We will drive to Philly or Salem, Massachusetts, or Long Island, and I actually consider that a live event with me as an audience member inside those. I love them. Oh, I love them.
That is 100% a live event. That is amazing. I have been to a few in St. Louis because St. Louis has some.
Yeah, Kansas City has great ones too, where I'm from.
Yeah, there was a phase where I loved going to corn mazes too, like haunted corn mazes.
Yep. Big fan.
Oh, that is awesome. Have you been to the one at Gateway Playhouse?
No, I didn't know they had one in Long Island.
Yeah, Gateway Playhouse for like a month. because like you go there and you do the shows. And so I've lit like 3 or 4 shows out there, but I've never been there in October because they close for like a month or two and they become a whole haunted house of like, and they send people through the theater, through the shops. And yeah, I think I've never experienced it, but I would like to.
Yeah, that's so cool. I was just out there not too long ago. I saw The Wedding Singer. Had a friend in that show. They do good work.
The Wedding Singer lit by me.
No.
Myself. Yes, I lit that show.
Really?
Yeah.
Sarah Ruth Ellis is a really good friend of mine. Shout out to Sarah. She's amazing. And we went out and saw the show.
Oh my gosh. See, I love this. This is amazing.
We've just been ships in the night forever, apparently.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. Okay. All right. Now, finance question for you. Are you good, bad, or neutral with money? And by the way, I ran this through ChatGPT recently, and it said I shouldn't be saying good, bad, or neutral because that puts some sort of judgment on it. So I'm supposed to say, what is your relationship with money?
I was going to say I reject the notion of good, bad, or otherwise with money. Like, right? And I think that comes largely for me through my experience of both working and living as an artist for a long time and building a business that's made many millions of dollars, those are very disparate experiences. And I think I identify like the episode I was just listening to your last episode as of this recording and the gentleman that you had on. I'm similar in that like my personal finances, they don't operate the same way my business finances operate, right? And I think back to our complicated relationship with capitalism, what I have really learned is that when there is enough and there's more than enough, you have the space to plan and run a cash flow sheet and a P&L. Do you know what I mean? Like with my business, it's lumpy. Sometimes like in July, we always have no work. So it's always like, fuck, what's going to happen? But it's good overall, right? And so I am excellent, similar to your last guest, at like, I've got a cash flow sheet. I have been able to change my relationship with money in that context from an emotional one, or I'm working on it. It's a constant progress. Let's be honest. There's still deep panic, and you're looking down the barrel of like, oh God, how am I going to pay the bills? But generally, I have been able to really understand in my body that it's a job and a business. And it's part of the deal, to like move money around and do all the wiggling you have to do to make your cash flow sheet work. In my personal finances, I will say, just as a button, I have for the last 5 years kept my salary pretty low at my production company, which is the company that I'm on salary with, just to help make sure I'm always okay with cash flow. And because I won a lottery apartment in New York, 12 years ago. My rent is low. It's great. It's an amazing thing I'm afforded. But I cannot do the same thing with that low salary and my money that I do with my business because there's just kind of not enough of it there, So like by your original question, maybe like bad at personal finances and good at the business. But I actually think that's kind of fucked. You know what I mean? Like, and if I was on someone else's salary and not my own, it would be because they're trying to not pay a living wage, right? It wouldn't be me personally affording myself the wiggle room in my business. And so that doesn't make you bad at money. That makes you have to scrape by, I think. Okay, off my soapbox now.
I just watched a Jon Stewart interview right before this, and I shouldn't have. Some guy was on there explaining how Uber and whatever the Uber is for nurses is suppressing worker wages. Like they will, because they have the data, right? So they can, so if the Uber driver accepts a low fee for a ride, the next one they will offer is lower.
Dynamic pricing in the reverse,
in
right?
the reverse. And then for the nurses, apparently they look up their people's credit score. They buy their credit score from wherever. And then if you have a lower credit score, they offer the nurse less money. And it's like this bizarro because
Whoa.
It's like, I don't know if they're using AI for that, but I feel like that is an AI for bad use.
Sure. Yeah.
But I also love what you said about when you have more, it's easier to budget. I think that's sort of what you said.
Right. How are you supposed to save if you don't have any extra? Which I think is like an easy definition of what someone means when they say good with money. That's a good one. That's an easy standout. What are you supposed to save? You can't save. You can't save 10% of your gross income. That's an insane thing to ask of someone who's barely scraping by. And that does not make them bad at money.
Yeah, 100%. Also, you keep referencing the previous episode, and I'll say that was with Matthew Principe,
Yes.
opera
Yes.
performer and producer, and that's artisticfinance.com/205 if you want to find that episode.
You just had that on the tip of your tongue. I love it.
Well, as of right now, it's in my brain because it's been within like the last 5 episodes. So let us now talk about Broadway, the producing model. Tell us what you know. But we started this because you wrote a Substack article when that Cats the Jellicle Ball announced its closing. A lot of people, Andrew Lloyd Webber specifically, saying like the Broadway just doesn't have a good producing model. And you chimed in with your thoughts. So was it just Andrew Lloyd Webber? What is the news around the Broadway producing model lately? And then your reaction to it.
This is like the worst digital media answer ever because, a hot take always travels further. But I think it, like many of my friends and collaborators and colleagues, it is exceptionally complicated. Just we're talking, for those of you who don't know my work, I want to really specifically say I'm talking in person only, right? Like in person, Broadway, 13 blocks, whatever it is, 40 theaters, for whatever, 48 shows a season.
Wait, should this be a moment, Broadway Unlocked, or should we talk about that so that people have context of who you are and where your opinion's coming from?
Yeah, because since I don't actually produce on Broadway, but I had to learn it all, and I learned it all for Broadway Unlocked. Maybe that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you just tell us what is Broadway Unlocked? And also, because I don't know how many businesses you have and how many are relevant. Maybe we should let's back up.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, you, theater person, how did you get into the business world, and what are those businesses looking like?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So, and I'll try to truncate the part that was before what currently exists. I made that live streamed concert, and it was super successful, and it was really fun, and it was incredible to see. Like, we created really a new format for a benefit concert that was digitally native as it was in-person native, like that I hadn't really seen before. So I was really artistically interested in it, and it was clear that we were creating this access point it was so early, but there was something special about it, right? And the concert was called Broadway Unlocked in 2013.
So you were in a career as a performer up until that point?
Yes.
Why did you decide to live stream this thing?
So I'm a serial volunteer for things that I care about, and a bunch of my friends and collaborators and colleagues in the Broadway industry, as you might guess by the statistics, are survivors of sexual assault, domestic abuse, and at the time, the Actors Fund, which is now the Entertainment Community Fund. A really good friend and alumni from Missouri State was having health issues, went to the fund to get health access, and they referred him to a place called the Crime Victims Treatment Center. This was in 2010, I think. And they saved his life. And then he told another one of our friends who's, publicly a survivor, and they went and they saved their life. And it just started going on and on and on. And so in 2011, that friend, Avery is his name, asked me if I would help him put on like a little concert on the side, right? Like, so in 2011, let's see, what was I doing in 2011? I was just about to go to MSU to choreograph 42nd Street. I had just finished 2 years in Cleveland, starting a theater that doesn't exist anymore, but with Everett Quinton from the Ridiculous Theater Company and a bunch of other Broadway people. It was amazing. And so just in my spare time, right, I was like, yeah, I'll help you make a concert to raise money. He wanted to buy a coloring table for the kids when their parents were in sessions at CVTC, is the place, Crime Victims Treatment Center. And I was like, I think we could do a little better. So we made like a really big, typical benefit concert at New World Stages. It was really good. We raised a ton of money, like tens of thousands of dollars, which I was 31 that year. Most of my friends, if they were producing a benefit concert, you're making a couple $100. So I considered it a real success. And so then we did it again in 12. And then coming out of 2012, I was in LA. I was sitting, I will never forget this. I was sitting in a car in the garage at LAX waiting for my boyfriend at the time to fly back in so I could drive him to our house that we had, because at that time I really was splitting time between the two cities. And I was listening to the Kickstarter podcast, because back then Kickstarter was so new that it had a podcast devoted to it. And the episode I was listening to was about the video game industry. And the way in which at that time they had kind of pioneered the idea of stretch goals, which now seem, if you know anything about crowdfunding, you're like, yeah, a stretch goal, right? You say we want to raise this much money in our crowdfunding raise. And then when you hit it, you say, okay, if we can raise this much more, then you, the fans, the participants, the donors or investors can help us like customize the next level, or you can make choice. Like the community was starting to have a say in the piece of art because they were helping to fund it. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I have this concert, and I know they're fancy Broadway people, but they're just my friends who I've like game night with and stuff. I have access to these people. So like, what if I want more people to donate and to become advocates for survivors of violence, what am I giving them in return for asking for their money? And I thought, what if we live stream this? And we created a hybrid format that meant I, in return for you donating smaller amounts, give you access to these incredible people you look up to in real time rather than having to wait at the time for YouTube to catch up, right? The videos to come out weeks later. Luckily, I did not think maybe I could not do that. I came home from LA and I was like, I'm doing this. And then I also remember at that time, so the end of 2012, like 54 Below is pretty new, but I had heard that they had cameras, and I went and I described what I wanted to do, which was a show, but I wanted video elements like Saturday Night Live, like opening credits and interstitials. I wanted video to move the show along so that it was in digital native format. I wanted segments where our onstage talent could like play a game and the in-person audience could compete with the digital audience so that we could all feel connected together. And they were like, oh yeah, we can't do that. And I was like, uh-oh, whoa, where are we going to go? And someone introduced me to the Green Space, which, have you been there in New York and Tribeca?
Yeah.
Whoever built this studio that early, it's where WNYC records almost everything that they do, and you can rent it. So it's been around before I was doing Broadway Unlocked. And so I went, and it's a real TV studio. And I was like, oh, amazing, we can do this. And so we created that first concert. And hats off to their tech team now, 13 years later, as I really know how to do all of that from a technical standpoint, which I didn't at the time. They made it happen for me. The shit I was asking them to do at that time was nuts. Like the idea of taking Google Meets, because Zoom didn't really even exist, or if it was very early, taking Google Meets feeds and then putting them in person and sending mix minuses through so that they could hear the live show and talk back and forth. That stuff was crazy to ask. And I was just like, man, we're going to do it. So that's how I decided to live stream, was really, I just looked at what is essentially a business, right? It was a concert that made money. And I said, I want my audience to be bigger, but the four walls around this room, the Green Space only can allow 120-ish people. So how do I make it bigger? How do I raise more money? And how do I create more dialogue around this? Because if more people are talking about this issue, we raise more money, we affect more change. And the answer to me was like the internet.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know. I haven't told that story in a while. It's fun. So anyway, that's how that all started. I kept doing it, and I kept learning more, and I kept getting curious about how liveness on the internet was related to liveness in person. And as, in whatever it was, 15, 16, as Periscope and Meerkat came out, which were the first live streaming apps on our phones, I'd call, like Joey Contreras, my writer friends, and be like, okay, you're doing a show at Rockwood tonight. Can I come down and live stream it just so I can kind of, who's watching this? Who wants to watch this? What does this really do for anybody? And so that put me in a nice position, as you might guess, when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, of course. I missed the jump from New World Stage's concert that did really well. So then you just started doing benefit concerts at the Green Room or the Green Space?
We did New World Stages in 11. We did 92Y Tribeca as our venue in 2012, but all in person, no cameras, right? Except for an archival capture. Yeah. And then in that break between the 12 concert and the 13 concert is when I was listening to that podcast and went, oh, what if I live streamed this?
Awesome. And then Broadway Unlocked. So when I hear Broadway Unlocked, I hear Broadway HD. But it sounds like this is very different than Broadway HD.
Yeah,
So is Broadway Unlocked just your, let's say, umbrella company that you do all your things in? Or is it a specific, like, I should go download the Broadway Unlocked app to watch a live stream of some show?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer, truthfully, like I maybe wouldn't say this if I was talking to an investor. I would just start from today, but because I think it's important and interesting for anybody else who's thinking about trying to forge a path like this. Broadway Unlocked started as a concert. Then my boyfriend at the time was like, I really think there's something more here. I had not even considered that it was anything more than a benefit concert. So I rebranded the concert to the Give Back concert, and Broadway Unlocked became the producer presenter, but it wasn't, there was no corporate structure, right? We were doing all our business with the money through Crime Victims Treatment Center, so we didn't have to get in the middle of their money. It was just a brand. It stood for something, right? It stood for exactly what the name says, which is like, how can we open the door to Broadway and these amazing experiences more widely than we can if we were just doing it in person. And then in 2017, I think it was, I really was like, I want to do something more significant with this brand. I know it has resonance. I know people want this idea that it stands for to exist. And I'm not sure what the market is ready for. Of course, I didn't have those terms at that time because I still was mostly just acting, directing, and choreographing. So I decided to start teaching myself about business and startups in particular. And so I did a bunch of stuff, learned what a P&L was, learned about investors and startup corporate structure. And in 2018, this is pretty typical me, we registered Broadway Unlocked I did not have a clear plan of what the business model was. I thought this is going to be something. So we're going to make it a business and I'm going to figure it out. And by the end of 2019, I actually had been working for about 9 months on turning it into a nonprofit, funny enough. Because as I was looking at what I now know is called product market fit, right? What do people actually want and need that they'll spend money on that we can provide under this very, I know what very Simon Sinek. I know the why, but I don't know what the what is yet. You know, I know those important circles, but I don't know the specific product-based one. I was like, I think this might just need to be a nonprofit where Broadway Unlocked exists as a home to learn how technology can be implemented to help create more sustainability inside arts, culture, and theater, particularly. So we were kind of well on our way to that when the pandemic hit. And then I wrote about this in my Substack too, which is broadwayunlocked.substack.app. I wrote about this moment, the pandemic hit, right? Like, I don't know where you were. I was like I was in final interviews to build the media company for the Dalai Lama's nonprofit. And that just went away. And obviously we couldn't act or dance or sing or direct or choreograph. And I sure thought I moped at home for a couple of weeks before I sort of did the thing that changed the trajectory of the rest of my life. But I didn't. I went back and checked the dates for my Substack. I did it the day after everything closed down in New York, which is very typical me too. And I was like, I just want to help. And I understand and I use all this technology in my artistic practice. So let me write a Medium article, that breaks down every tool. I'd already been using Zoom for years. I'd been using Google Meets. I'd been using Zencaster, which was the predecessor to Riverside for podcasts. And then someone in my life told me, make it a lead generator, like let people sign up for calls with you. So I was like, oh, okay, sure. Then I started giving away pay what you can, half-hour calls where I'd help you if you had a problem you're working at your arts institution, like, whether it's helping you set up OBS, which I'd already used at that point, which is live streaming software, or like brainstorming how to give art lessons on Instagram Live, which I had already experimented with. I was doing this for theater makers all over the country because I've had this long career in theater. So everyone knew, like so many people knew. And then the Guthrie called because I knew someone who worked there. And that was the start of my production company. They were like, we were supposed to do a gala. You've been doing these live streamed concerts that raise money and are performance based for like a decade. Will you do this for us? And that launched basically 11 months of spinning up a real production company, which at the time was called Broadway Unlocked, to further like kind of illustrate how this changed so much over a decade. It was called Broadway Unlocked. We did, I don't even know, 100 shows in 11 months. We did $1 million in revenue from nothing. I had never run a business before. I had 4 full-time employees, 40 contractors. We were kicking out 5-6 shows a month. It was crazy for like New York City Ballet, Philadelphia Orchestra, the Smithsonian, Annapolis Opera and Glimmerglass Opera, like all these places that we know. And that sort of went on until we came back outside, right? And then the entire arts industry was like, deuces, no thanks. Yes, this was cool, but like we'll go back to in person only. So that's to bring us to today when a split started to happen with my businesses. So all together now, we created and is a production company, right? And specializes in live production for both digital and in-person audiences. And Broadway Unlocked started to take its newest shape, which is, I think, where it will land, right? Like it is, because I've already raised money for it. Broadway Unlocked is a place rather than a library of content. It's a place you go to watch live theater, arts and culture, to be in communion with other people, and to be able to experience the arts and feel like you're as close to in person as possible, because the point of it really is to either give you access if you're just never going to have access, i.e., it's a lot cheaper, or to give you an easier way to discover you love theater and to drive you to then start going in person in the town that you live in, right? In the country that you live in, rather than asking you to fly to New York, pay for a hotel, and pay, $125, $150 to see if you like a show.
Amazing. So 2 questions. So the production company where you said we do digital and virtual productions. When you say digital production, I hear Dear Evan Hansen, which has a lot of projections.
Oh, yeah. No.
but what do you mean by that? Like it's a digital in person? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's probably closest to, it's not really a theatrical term. It's like event production, right? So because this is a good example, one of the things that we do that's outside of the theater altogether now, we work with a huge agency who works with a huge publicly traded retail company that you would know. They this agency produces these big marketing activations all over the country for this retailer. Some of those marketing activations have a live stage show in the middle of them. So we are their vendor for the live stage show production, which means the director, the show caller, the key creatives, the lighting designer, the A1, we call it an event production, which is your sound mixer, your A2, who's backstage, your video, your camera director, right? Like the stage manager, the deck people, all the theatrical pieces of it, we provide the humans, oversee the logistics for all of that. And it's the same when we go work with an arts institution, right? I'm trying to think of a good example. Like we're going to do a show in October from Town Hall in New York City, where they already have the in-person. It's a new musical, it's a concert, benefit concert, very starry. The producing team's covering the in-person production. We are producing the live broadcast, every element of the live broadcast overlay that's going to go with that in-person production.
Got it. Okay. So you can do the live event part or you can do the streaming part.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. And then BroadwayUnlocked.com is...
Yep. Thank you.
is the what I'll call the Broadway HD box.
Yeah.
that is where you can go watch content. And then the content that you're putting there, how local, like how small does it go? Like because I'm thinking like Broadway and like huge scale things, they can do it. But could I do the Kirkwood Community Theater here in St. Louis? Is there ever a world in which you would film their very like local community production of, I don't know, the 39 Steps? So I guess give me context of like what is the content there? I know live theater.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're for profit, which means we've got to be able to make a profit, right? Duh. Sounds self-evident, but I think it's good context for what I'm about to say next. So what we're not, and what I don't think we'll ever be, but who knows, because building a business, building a startup everything changes on a dime, but I don't think we'll ever be Howl Round, right? Which is this incredible online commons where anyone can put their show up, right, for a live stream and or on demand access. I don't think we're going to be that, because while Broadway Unlocked, yes, is sure technically a platform wherein you can come experience theater live, what we're really doing and how all of these pieces and parts start to come together is building infrastructure for a thriving arm of Broadway that enjoys the efficiencies provided by technology, right? And what I have learned over the last 6 years of directing broadcasts, Broadway's first live broadcast, working with these institutions, trying to figure out digital audiences, is that theater in Kirkwood that you're talking about, they don't have the infrastructure to drive audiences to that show. And if the show is not interesting enough in the scheme of all of the shows that are on a particular platform, it is my view that no one is benefiting except the owner of the technology, who's making a shit ton of money because they're just charging you high margin, right, fees. And that is not what it might be a byproduct of what we're doing, but we're here to build a system, right? Like a system, a third space, a Broadway that works a little differently, but feeds everyone as a whole. So to that reason, I don't think we'll ever be a Howl Round. So where we start is where we are right now. It's existing productions that are happening on the Broadway level. So I know we really stand for quality. I think that's a big differentiator also from some of our other competitors. Live quality when it's live. We're live and there's high quality. So we're working with these shows we're producing the broadcast, then we're going to put them on our platform, and we're going to produce the live experience and sell the tickets and all that stuff, right? The second step for us is then to add a layer of our own producing. And for us, that's going to be new work. So we're in the middle of raising and building an accelerator, basically, right? That will allow us to make really early investments in excellent theater that fits a thesis, and then basically produce it in public on our platform live, right, over a period of time. And so then we have, at that point, you have your big stuff that's coming from Broadway that's, someone else is producing. You have our stuff. It's a little smaller. It's medium-sized, but it's really doing the creator economy work of like building audience and making sure that we always have content coming out. And I think the last piece will be something like the question you posed, but I think about it a lot. And I think where my brain goes to how like that works in a thriving system is like when there is a platform with constant live experiences and you can really have your choice of what you're going to buy tickets to, and you're an audience member on the internet that loves the identity of being a Broadway Unlocked fan and a supporter of live theater through it, I started thinking about like, okay, well, what if there's like 2 weeks where it's Dear Evan Hansen week, and any production of Dear Evan Hansen across the world that's happening can live broadcast, because that's a thing I can sell. I can market that. Even if you're that small theater in Kirkwood, you're part of this bigger sort of circus, in a way. And those are the kind of things I start to think could possibly actually allow a small theater in Kirkwood, Missouri to live broadcast, for us to invest maybe in that as well, to help them produce it and create a thriving system that benefits as many people as possible, if that makes any sense. But who knows, we're all at the very beginning of all that,
That's amazing. Yeah, shout out to Kirkwood Theater Guild, who I've never worked there.
We love
community theater, so I don't think that they employ people per se.
Sure.
So anyway, shout out, guys. And when you end up on Broadway Unlocked, you're welcome.
Hell yeah,
Jeff made that happen.
Yeah, we'll have a Kirkwood themed one, right, where it stages St. Louis and like the Kirkwood Community Theater
and the Muni and
the Muni,
and Opera Theater.
Yeah, St. Louis. That would be awesome.
Oh, I love it. Cool. Okay, so I'm lighting in projections for this country musical called Stardust Rioters. None of this is official, so I probably shouldn't even talk about it. It's just a rumor. But anyway,
sure.
So there's this fictional show. It's in development, right? So we did one stand-up in Nashville. Everybody had a mic in front of a mic stand with the script on it, and they play the actors play the instruments. Anyway, but they all just stood there, and then the projections were up there, and we went through the show. But anyway, just a developmental thing.
Yeah,
and
workshop.
The next step we're trying to figure out, but the rumor is somewhere at a repertory theater in the Northeast, New Jersey, let's say.
What?
putting the production up there to sort of like develop it. The producer is very savvy, and so I don't know that their eye is on Broadway. However, their eye is not on Broadway, right? But we definitely have to develop it. And so I'm just wondering, with Broadway Unlocked, say this musical that is could be a very commercial piece, I think. At what stage would you get involved with this show if it were going to go digital? As in, like, would you get involved in the New Jersey regional developmental part, or do you wait until it's on Broadway and start integrating there? Like, at what point does the model, where does your model join in the digital part?
What exists right now, right, currently, which we, to again, just like have some transparency in case anybody like me in my earlier stages is listening and wants to take some inspiration. So what exists right now, which I betaed and built with my own money, which is the platform that exists in the ticket selling. We white label other technology. It's a whole thing. I'm happy to talk about it to anyone who wants to know more. But we have a platform, we have processes, we have workflows, and we have our production company. And that I all built with myself, like my own money coming from my own businesses. Now we've raised a small amount of capital for this fall. So that exists. And that is going to go into the marketing of other people's shows that will live stream on our platform. Right? Because that's the thing, like, no one's really figured out at all, is everybody knows how to put a decent show online. No one knows how to, like, go find audiences outside of the ones you know. So we're going to do it because it needs to be done to build a healthy, thriving system. So with all of that, because that really exists right now, the answer to your question probably is, for us, Broadway, like, or an off-Broadway run. That has to do... And this is, you can decide if you want to take this out or not, but I'm not scared to talk about this. The unions don't have the theatrical unions don't have standardized agreements for broadcasting things on the internet in their full-length form. That is understandable. And I want to say I was a 20-year member of Equity. I am a working member of SAG. I am so pro-union, it's stupid. And I am often cited as someone who has... People who work for me say they were never paid what they were worth until they worked for me, right? So I just want to very clearly state, because I think sometimes the internet can mistake this for anti-labor views. It is not. It is just the truth that other than a nonprofit, there's like there's a little clause left over from COVID, as I understand it, that allows a nonprofit to stream with a nonprofit streaming partner, like a Howl Round or League of Live Stream Theater, all of whom are doing great work, I think, personally. Other than that, there is no standardized agreement. So what it does from a business perspective, both on behalf of the producers, like your producers, and us, both of whom are trying to run a commercial business, means it's very difficult to create a budget, a P&L, a model to understand how many tickets you need, because you've got to go negotiate, right, an agreement individually with each of the unions that are involved in this show, and it's not standardized. So it really could be anything. And that is a really difficult thing for everybody. I think everybody's kind of in a really tough spot, in my personal opinion. So going into a regional partner in the Northeast, that's, I assume, on a LORC contract, is just like not good business, unfortunately. And that stinks. But there are partners like League of Live Stream Theater that do that really well, I will say, shout out. So that, for that reason, it really makes sense once you've got a bigger marketing budget behind you. Do you know what I mean, for your in-person?
So is the business model for you, you're saying Broadway, because you will get involved in the Broadway and then sort of like provide digital access and find an audience that one will watch the digital, but then potentially also then go feed the Broadway. Like, they will be
100%.
like, oh, I saw this 2 years ago on Broadway Unlocked, with my favorite musical of all time. Finally, my vacation is up and I'm going to New York and that show is still running. I'm going to go see it.
Yep. There is so much data that says that is what happens. That if you experience the arts digitally first, you're 3 to 5 times more likely to go in person. And that's, for many reasons. So anyway, that's sort of, I think, how we work in what exists right now. The second phase of what we're building for starting in 2027, this accelerator, what I would say is I'd have a meeting with those writers before they've signed an option. And if the script is great, because it has to be a script, because that's the thing, that's an asset that has value, and it fits one of our content pillars, because we've learned people come to the internet to watch full-length things for certain kinds of content and not other themes. So it fits one of our content pillars. Then I would say, come be a part of our accelerator, where we're going to invest in you. It's not front money. We're going to invest in you. We're going to take you through our accelerator process before the regional, before the workshop. We're not a theater. And we're going to start building your audience and preparing you to run your own IP business. And the byproduct of that is You work on your show, you work on it in public, you work on it on the internet, and people, if it hits, you're starting to travel through this process you're describing, the workshops, the out of towns at the regional theaters with an audience already, with some revenue coming into your company that your copyright is assigned to, and in that world, everyone wins. So that's the part that doesn't exist yet, or is in its infant stages, let's say.
I think Be More Chill comes to mind because it did really well off Broadway. And then it went to Broadway and it closed very rapidly.
Yes.
And people were saying, well, the audience, it was like this, the charm of it was this like ragtag sort of off-Broadway feel. And then when it got to Broadway, it got polished, and then that just wasn't as appealing. And the audience sort of disappeared. Like the audience that would have gone to see it off Broadway wasn't the one that... Anyway, would Broadway Unlocked change that at all? Like if Be More Chill could happen now, how would it have helped?
Yeah, dude, Be More Chill is like our in our family tree, right? Like our great grand, daddy, definitely in the lineage.
Wait, I'm now paranoid. You're gonna be like, yeah, we were involved in it, and we're the reason.
No, we weren't. We weren't. No,
no.
But I definitely was like watching it all. Of course, right? It's it was really our first example of an internet developed property moving to Broadway. I think the crucial thing that has to be a part of our conversation and the question you just asked is that is a writer on their own doing this process for their own show. And again, just to go back to what I said like 20 minutes ago, we're building a system and a process that is meant to benefit everyone and aggregate those benefits and atomize them across everyone. So yes, like, sure, we're developing your show that you're working on, as a projectionist and lighting designer, that one show, but we're really building this big system that asks, okay, you're in a cohort with 6 other shows. So how does that help as all 6 of you are going through this process and we're applying all our marketing to your shows and you're going through our accelerator process, right? We're the building of a flywheel, I guess my point is, rather than a one-off try at something, is that we start to shape the health and sustainability of the entire process. I think that applies to even how producers would treat an internet-developed show once it goes to Broadway. I don't think that's the same in the world we're building as it was for Joe when he moved that show to Broadway. That's the big difference, I would say.
Okay. Also, I want to throw back to when you were saying I'm pro-union, part of union, love the union. However, the union is not a thorn in our side, but like because of the rules, we have there's problems that we have to solve, and it's sort of like one of those situations of like we have to build it, like we have to do the work, which is where it's slow down because like we have to now do all the work. It's not laid out for us already. So we have to be the trailblazers is what I'm hearing. But I also want to say, yes, on this show, again, holding space for multiple things. My friend Elena Sartor is producing this it's a play called Pookie Goes Grenading.
It's a great name.
We'll invite you.
Great.
We were going to do it in October. Now the director got busy, so we think we're going to push it to like March of next year or February. But the plan is right now doing an IRT theater, nonprofit, and the full budget is $12,300. And we are currently like working on raising that money. And I think we have 1451 so far. So we have a ways to go. But yeah. I'm saying this because that's the full budget. It's a small little theater. I think there's 50 seats. We have chosen to go non-equity because with that amount of money and with that small zone, like the rules of equity, even though we would love to like have the equity actors be in there. And USA 829, like for the designer and technicians, IATSE, we don't have the barriers that prevent us from working on a little show like that. Like we can go do it and that's not a problem. Like we don't get in trouble with the union, but actors equity, rightfully so, like that's a problem. And same thing with like directors. Anyway, so again, pro-union, I'm a member of a union going on like 13 years or something. However, to put up this show, like we just don't know. We don't have the vision like you maybe have to like do it on a bigger scale. This first version has to be. And so we're doing it non-union. I'm not saying I feel guilty about it, but there is always that thing of like, I wish we could do it union, but it's just not feasible. Like there's just not a way.
Yeah.
No one's anti you for how the world works.
Well, like, and we are privileged, given like in context of the story that you just told, we're so privileged because the business model we're building, has advantages because technology creates efficiencies across a lot of it. And so we will, even though it's very difficult for us to work with the Broadway context, whatever it is, 16 guilds and unions currently, because things aren't standardized. What we can do from the beginning is build a business model that allows us to not only pay people the wage they should be paid for the work they are going to do for us and for the subsequent usage of the things they own, their nil rights and things like that. We can also make it legible and transparent and publish it as blueprint models. My dear hope, in that process is that we'll be able to create some, the blueprint models is the perfect name for it, for the unions to start looking at, so that they can try to make some decisions should they want to standardize the agreement.
And I think eventually, like long term, they do want to standardize the agreement.
Yeah,
I think
I hope so.
I hope so too. Like I think they want it because we know we live in a digital world. We want these agreements. It's the same with like AI. It's like we want to figure it out, but it's going to be a long road and it's painful and it's complicated because we come from a world that exists already and is made because I also say like one of the reasons for the union in the United States is that people need healthcare. Like people need healthcare and people need retirement accounts, right? Because I'm a firm believer, again, not like I'm pro huge government, whatever, but I want government to be useful. And I don't see why government just doesn't have like a public option for a retirement account where it's like you're born, you get a social security number and you get your retirement account. And wherever you work, the money, you have the option to put some of the money into that retirement account. And then you jump from job to job and it's, anyway, tangent here. But if the United States were to go to universal healthcare, which won't happen overnight, so this isn't a real problem. But it's like, do the unions then get weakened because they're not needed for that? Like, that's a very strong thing that they're needed for. And so I have this like utopia in the future where I'm like, the unions won't be as like if we can iron some other stuff out in society, then like the union doesn't have to do the lifting on that part. And so then it gets less complicated anyway. But that's like, 1,000 years from now when we're all dead.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so this is all amazing, fantastic. You're so cool with business. I'm in awe. Going back to your Substack, which is why we sort of talked in the first place, and your hot take, the Broadway producing model, and you're saying like I'm not a Broadway producer per se, so like you don't listen to me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I just saw a video yesterday that somebody who I assume knows what they're talking about, they said, Broadway isn't healthy right now because historically since the 80s or maybe 60s, we've had 3 mega hits every decade. And like somehow that sustains an audience to come to see those shows, and then they go see other shows when they show up in town or whatever. So somehow they consider it a healthy Broadway when you're getting like a mega hit every 3 years. And they're saying Hamilton was our last one, which was 10 years ago. So therefore, this also plays into Broadway being unhealthy. And then the thing with Cats the Jellicle Ball, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know what I'm saying, but
I think you do.
I believe the ticket sales were doing well, right? But it's still closed. So that's like the big thing is like, wait, how can they be sort of selling out and also not recouping? And then that's where Andrew Lloyd Webber,
right.
No shade to that amazing man who does amazing work.
Yeah.
But also like, I just like, when billionaires talk, I'm not saying I tune them out a little bit, but I'm like, I don't know. Like you're just unhappy that you're like, I can't help but be a little cynical and be like, you're just unhappy your show didn't last forever. Because I want to say, this is my hot take, that School of Rock was on Broadway for like 3 years. And I don't think it deserved to be on Broadway for 3 years. I think it was okay. I liked it and I saw it twice, right? So you may be like, Ethan, what are you talking about? You went to see the show twice. Well, I wanted to go see the band's Visit the second time, but people wanted to go see School of Rock because it was closing, blah, blah, blah. So I would not have gone to see it the second time. And also, hot take, the lighting was amazing, impeccable, perfect. However, I'm like, I could have done that. I could have gotten that paycheck, and no shade to that incredible designer. Anyway, so I just feel like going to see it, I was like, this is not groundbreaking. So why am I saying all this? So Jess, Broadway model, is it unhealthy? You're saying you can make it healthier is what I'm hearing. And so I guess what are the problems with it now? Because, and also my view from a distance, I'm like, Broadway has always been expensive to produce on. So I don't see what's different now than 20 years ago. Like, go back in time, adjust for inflation, sort of the same deal, like hard to produce a show like that's why it's amazing when we get a mega hit or something. And I also like my view on Chicago, which has now been running for 30 years or not, since 96, whatever that is.
Yeah, I saw the original cast.
Whoa, calm down, Jess. Calm down. I was
in high school, to be fair.
Okay, I saw like the 45th cast or something. But that show, right? I look at it and cynical me is saying, oh, it's because it's a bare bones production, and it's able to financially survive. It's not that it is like the most amazing show in the world, which is why it's been running for 30 years. It's because it's like had a cost structure, I think, from the outside perspective, not knowing anything about the producing, but it has a cost structure that has enabled it to get through lean weeks and lean times and really like maybe not be profitable, but know that, oh, we're only losing a little bit because our costs are so low. So I don't know what I've said, but now your turn.
Okay. Here's, in terms of the diagnosis, because I don't produce in-person Broadway, but I have had to learn as much as humanly possible about it in order to design an adjacent system that hopefully helps it and feeds it. I think what I'll do is say, first of all, there are so many nooks and it is a haunted house of challenges. And I don't know the half of them, right? So that's number one. I feel like when anyone is talking, number one for me, when anyone is talking about this question that you pose, what's broken about Broadway, like anyone who tells you it's this or it's that, it is a nightmare thread of challenges that come from really good reasons, really bad reasons, accidents, everything in between. So that's first. And then secondly, I think maybe I'll just cite a couple of the things I think about a lot and the people who are smarter than I am, who are very singularly focused on those things, because I think they're great people to be following and to be reading and to be listening to. So the first thing that I think is real. It's just true. I don't think it. It is a problem with Broadway. And to your point, it's been a problem with Broadway since the beginning of time, is that it suffers from an economic theory called cost disease. I can kind of explain it, but I would highly recommend you listen to the 3-part Freakonomics podcast series from last summer, right about this time, on the business of Broadway. Did you listen to that?
Yes, I did listen. I will link that in the show notes if anybody wants to find that. Yep.
Great, because there is an economist who talks about cost disease. And to be honest with you, it was the first time I'd ever heard about it. And cost disease essentially, right, is that Broadway is an industry of labor. It never benefits particularly significantly from the cost efficiencies that technology brings as technology evolves and is integrated into industry. So what it really means is our cost just goes up, to your point. That's it. It doesn't go down. It's not going to go down. And that's what I was real upset about the other day on my Substack, was like all this yelling and moaning. But like, to your point, at where I'm sitting as well, this doesn't ever go away, period.
And my hot take from being a lighting designer, right? Because I feel like there was implications that like lighting designers and unions are like the cause of our problem. Like those people need to get paid less is what I heard. And, so obviously that's my perspective, where I'm like, no, that's not. No.
And that's why we need unions, right? Because
like to make you more money doesn't mean you need to cut my wages. Thank you.
The efficiencies can't come from labor, right? Exactly. They're meant to come from, in a healthy economy, non-labor opportunities. And I will say, as a side note, I wanted to say this earlier, so it's just a little aside. I'll come back to this question, but I think we are really in an interesting spot where there's like this sort of pre-technological revolution version of a producer, a business owner, in our industry at least. I'm going to just specifically talk about that. That's subscribing to the overall methods of capitalism, which is reduce costs, increase profit. That's good. And that's what the unions were formed, right, to protect labor against. And where I see we are now in talking to you, so many of my colleagues, where information is so readily available to us through technology and tools are so affordable to access, that many of us who lived our entire lives as labor, myself included, have begun to build companies. And I can only speak for myself, but I know many people who feel this way too. If I cannot pay someone a living wage commensurate with the job that they're doing, I'm not going to build it, because I'm never going to perpetuate on someone else what I lived through for the first 20 years of my career, which is I was never, ever, ever paid what I was worth, ever.
Okay, side note, editing this podcast, I do it myself. It takes hours. I have people say, Ethan, you really, in order to put out more episodes, whatever, and focus on the quality, right, you need to offboard your editing. And I just refuse because I have a Patreon, right? And people pay me. So it's roughly $300 a month that I get in, blah, blah, blah. Cut through the chase, that comes down to $200. Anyway, but $200 to put out 4 episodes is not enough to pay an editor. And I just refuse. I will not, like you're saying, I will not build it. I will not ask somebody to edit it for $25 or $50 or whatever. So that is a side note. And thank you.
Yeah.
I related to that.
Yes. And so there's not a place for us as it pertains to an industry that has evolved needing labor unions to collectively bargain. And of course, all the other things that you already mentioned, right? I tried for 6 years to back channel meetings at Equity to literally hand someone, I just wanted them to look at the budgets for the live broadcast so that they could be informed as they start thinking, because I see this change coming. It is inevitable. It is not going to happen no matter how far everybody sticks their heads down in the sand. And I believe that if you know what's happening on the business side of things, everybody benefits. Everybody benefits. And I couldn't get one freaking person to talk to me. That's insane. And that's when I quit Equity, because to be honest with you, I was really upset, because I'm here, I'm doing this, yes, fine, to make money and to make my investors money. But also there are mechanisms for corporate entities in 2026 that are not what we call shareholder primacy, profit over everything, right? There is a B Corp. There is a trust-owned for-profit. There is some other, I forgot what it's called, L4, I think is what it's called. That's kind of a nonprofit for-profit. And we don't have any way of creating space for the people like us that are coming in to try to make better, more balanced businesses that make everybody money. You know what I mean? So anyway, it's real annoying. Cost disease. So cost disease is one. Listen to the Freakonomics podcast, because it's quite an interesting and useful, I think, look into that side of things. That's one of the problems with Broadway that I'm often thinking about, obviously, because I'm building a business with technology integrated into it that should feed the side of our business that really basically only has tech in the ticketing and the licensing side of things. I don't think I'm misspeaking about that. And some of the mechanical pieces of the design process, but I'm not sure that any of that amounts to significant cost savings anywhere. I don't know. You know better than I do.
Yeah. No, I agree. Because also, and that's just for ticketing, I'm of the opinion that it is mind-boggling to me how difficult sometimes it is to buy a ticket to a show.
That's wild.
And I'm like, how is this 2026? And sometimes I'm like, did I buy the ticket? Let me go check my email. This.
I know.
Or it's just cringy. But anyway.
I very much hurt the feelings of someone from the Schubert organization up at Sardi's one night when I was like, and he was like, no, everyone says they hate our ticketing process, but they can't tell me why. And I was like,
let's go buy a ticket, shall we? This is what you need. Let me buy a ticket. Do you feel like this is 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
I know. I felt really bad because he's a wonderful human and he really cares, which is exactly what we need, I think, behind, are the desks of these organizations. But boy, I hurt his feelings. I didn't mean to.
It's also why Today Ticks in my brain has done so well, because it's they've just updated it. They made it a little easier,
Yeah,
but anyway.
100%. Okay, cost disease and Freakonomics. Second thing to the cats example, second problem we're facing is all around the money, right? And so I would highly recommend you read Jared Harbour on Substack.
I love Jared Harbour.
Now, look, he's a polarizing dude. I have colleagues and people who work for me who are like, he's gone a bridge too far. He's too outrageous.
But, I mean, he's transparent. So that's my brain of you be transparent. And I don't think he's on a bridge too far. I will also say that.
I don't either. And to be fair, let me I will present both of the sides of how I feel about Jared, who I've had coffee with.
And I will put a link to his LinkedIn, because that's where I follow him, is on LinkedIn. He has a Substack, so you can read it. But I'll put a link to his stuff.
That's perfect. I really love Jared. As soon as I found his first article, I took him to coffee and was like, "Who the f are you? What are you doing? This is amazing." I think both, and I think it's really important. Theme of our episode, to hold space for both things. That he is exceptionally transparent. He has a right to be mad. Right? We have a right to feel our feelings. And I think that's a thing I hear sometimes in response to him is like, I don't like how aggressively outraged he is. You have a right to your feelings. And in pursuit of trying to solve these problems, I do think there is a space for many different kinds of people who attack the problems with many different kinds of ways. For me, he is a little too sure-footed of himself. Like that kind of goes hand in hand, that he's certain he knows the problem and the thing that would fix it. And I have, at least for me, found in my career that it's like a million different cracks. You know what I mean? And that I wish I always crave a little more of in his stuff. But look, there's a place for what he's doing, and it's important, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, okay, hot take on Ken Davenport. Like, any time I see that guy, he's an amazing human being. He's lovely. I met him. He's great. That being said, I have a visceral response anytime I see him post online that I'm just like, get annoyed with anything he says. And
that's funny.
And that's just my response, right? So like, in a way, I want nothing to do with him professionally. Not he's in a league of his own, not mine. But like, and Jared, but I feel like Jared, I have seen, he will post and say, okay, people called me out on XYZ. And you know what? They're right, actually. Like,
yeah, that's true.
So I guess maybe I've just followed him long enough that because he's only been like doing these hot takes for like a year, 2 years. I don't know. It's not a long history so far. So like, I also see him as a young whippersnapper, right?
Yeah.
And that and I love that, because I feel like the young whippersnapper like brings out stuff that other established people would not do. And it's like, well, we need somebody to like, anyway.
I agree 100%. So definitely he broke down basically the average ticket price, right? The problem with Cats lies in the math of how much each of the seats was actually getting dollar-wise. So even though it was 90% capacity, right, what is that? The value of each of those seats, it wasn't high enough. And so I think I cannot explain all of that as well as he can. He is so good at that. And he has some really nice charts in the particular Substack he wrote about that. And so I think that's a problem that actually then tunnels into the third one that I'll cite of many, which is, I'm not sure we're great at marketing on Broadway, right? With Cats, there was not, it seems like, a perceived value high enough to get in that seat. And that is a thing you change with marketing. It's a thing you change with the quality of your show, but that show, I think, by all accounts, 90% of people would agree, was pretty great. It's not for everyone's taste, that's for sure, but it was a great show. And I don't know, I look at shows like Gatsby and maybe Happy Ending and Oh Mary, so Austin Spiro and Catherine Quinn specifically, and so they're good people to follow as well. And I see, as a digital consumer of content, I see so many different ways to fall in love with the show based on the marketing campaigns they're running. I can watch clips of those shows. They show up in my feed. I can feel like the show has a bit of cultural relevance in my life outside of theater with the memes and the trends. I can fall in love with the revolving door of Gatsby's and of ensemble members, and of course like the Marys, because I get to know those people behind the scenes through their content. Like, to me, in this age where like your algorithm is not guaranteed to deliver anything in particular into your feed, it's not a billboard you're driving past every day on the way to work. Like, if you're not marketing a show and creating as many lanes as possible for someone to see a video and fall in love with the show, then you're not marketing the show. And again, who knows? My algorithm maybe just wasn't giving me Cats, which is insane because I'm a super fan. I saw clips of shows and that's it. So why do I want to pay $250 to sit in that seat? I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, like, this relates to me in like a little bit of a different, like, I agree with you because I see Gatsby and I have not seen the show, but everybody, I have lighting students, so I teach at Webster University, and I always ask, like, who's your favorite lighting designer? That's my fun icebreaker. All the students I've interviewed and my own students, like, I keep hearing Corey Paddock. And I'm like, why is this Corey? Like, Corey Paddock is an amazing designer. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But so is
Yeah.
Natasha Katz. And so is Isabella Bird. And so, but they're always saying Corey Paddock. And then they're saying Gatsby. They're like, Gatsby. And no shade to Corey Paddock at all. And it looks gorgeous, but like, it's not, it's like when I saw School of Rock, where I'm like, it's amazing, it's perfect and everything. But also, it's not like overly amazing to me. So my,
sure.
And
sure,
so I'm like, why is this show keep coming up? They say they love the lighting of it and they love Corey Paddock. And Corey Paddock, my hot take is why all these youngsters love him so much is his Instagram and his digital presence is so beautiful.
He is accessible, period. Before it's beautiful, he's fucking accessible.
Yeah. And so I think that relates to what you're saying about Gatsby. I think you're right, because I'm like, I don't understand how it's run so long in such a large theater. Like, that's very impressive to me. But what you're saying is like they're doing a good job marketing, potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And creating the perceived demand to see the show.
And I'm also thinking with Cats. So I'm not a super fan of Cats. So it didn't show up on my feed.
Yeah, that's funny.
But
I'm a super fan of both Cats, by the way. I'll out myself right there. I also when I saw the original cast of Chicago, I saw the last cast of Cats that had an original cast member that year as well. And I was a dancer, right, first. And so it's as a side jaunt, but a really fun one. And, in my love of theater, when I sat down to watch Jellicle Ball on Broadway and the first strains of that overture started, all the hair stood up on my neck. And I all of a sudden was transported back to the first time I saw it in a Broadway theater, and those cats came down the aisles with their developes over above their heads. And I was like, what is this? This is amazing, I mean, like, look, I get it if you don't like cats. I really do. But for me, it was a seminal experience as a theater maker. And how extraordinary in my lifetime, in my career, to have had my life changed twice by that show. Because when that started with Jellicle Ball, it all happened again. And then, even though I knew what I was getting into, because we were working at PAC on a live broadcast while Jellicle Ball was happening down there, I knew everything. And I still was like, wow, holy, like, this is all in the text. It was all there the whole time. And the fans and everybody's jumping out of their seats. And my God, I didn't know this is what, theater could be in 2026 still. It's amazing. And all these people of color and Junior LaBeija, anyway.
That's amazing.
So I'm a super fan.
And just for the record, I've said I'm not a fan, but I'm not a fan. Like, I enjoy the music. I enjoy, I
neutral.
would totally go see, if somebody wanted to go see the show, I would 100% go. I'm just saying, like, I would choose something else first. So anyway, big fan. I think I respect the show quite a bit, and I like it.
It's great.
I'm just not a super fan.
So I will just real quick, for my own sake, what I will sum up in my 3 problems I put out there is I think those are 3 very specific problems with challenges with in-person that we are working to counterbalance inside the Broadway Unlocked business model. Cost disease. So what can we build with technology that gives us some cost efficiencies and makes it easier to get work up and out? Pricing. Is there something we can build that sits alongside Broadway that isn't, if we agree to say this isn't getting cheaper and it shouldn't, then what can we build alongside it that is a little cheaper without exploiting labor to the best of our ability? And then thirdly, how can we build a system and a flywheel on behalf of all shows rather than the 3 we just talked about that benefit from modern marketing that cuts through the noise of contemporary culture?
Yeah. Thank you for wrapping that up. I think that's a perfect way to end this. just because we've run out of our time, so we have to end anyway.
Yes.
So you've highlighted some problems that you're solving. So if anybody needs to solve those problems, they should get a hold of you.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's wrap up with just 2 really quick questions. And this one is just so super, super, super for fun. If you could send a show to Broadway right now that is going to be like a huge mega success or is going to run and everyone's going to love it, what show would that be?
I am super partial, because we've worked on it in development, to a new musical called Particle that is written by Selda, Saheen, and Derek Greger. Selda and Derek are their names. You can follow them on Instagram. Particle is a coming-of-age story about a brother and sister set against the high-octane world of esports, which is, if you don't know, League of Legends, like competitive video games, basically. I mean, someone's going to die that I just reduced it down to that. But just for the sake of making it easy, that's what it is. And at the same time, it is such a big, sprawling, audacious show because, at least in my version of it, it has live gameplay and that's choreographed and it's very theatrical. That's a monster, as you know. It is also such a small, intimate show about a brother and a sister and a young woman learning her power. And I am so over the moon and impressed with how they balance both of those things inside this giant, 2-hour musical. That is the show I would send to Broadway tomorrow if I could.
Amazing. All right, you said you've worked on it. So if we Instagram those people, will we be able to see clips or anything like that?
Yeah. In fact, I think right now, July 31st, they are in Texas working with high schoolers on it right now. And they just did some Instagram. But yes, there's some on my Instagram or on Broadway Unlocked's Instagram as well, because we did a pilot of part of the Broadway Unlocked Accelerator at Missouri State last spring, actually, and did the equivalent of what's like a 29-hour reading. But we filmed it all, and we were able to create a bunch of clips of the work in development.
That is awesome. Okay, well, I will find some clips or I will link them in the show notes. All right, last question for you. Where can people connect with you, and who do you want to connect with you, if anyone?
We love asks and offers, right? Wait, can I do it in an asks and offers like format too? Because I would love to, as I said throughout this episode, if you're a person who is, a person in the entertainment industry trying to figure out how you can build a business, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to do a half-hour Zoom, or whatever it is. I'd be helpful and make introductions in any way I can, as long as you're really coming to the table with something, significant, passion, and work behind you. So please do reach out on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure it's /Jessica Ryan LA, because that's my handle across all social media. That's my offer. And my ask is that, if you are an investor, a producer, or an artist that has work that wants to live digitally first in an effort to be more sustainable and successful for the long term, I think I'm not being super egotistical when I say there's no one out there that knows more about this than me and that has done more, tangibly worked more on this problem than me and my team. And we would love to hear from you. I think there's a lot of opportunity in these early days, as we've just raised our first round, to be involved, in ways that are significant early on. And I'm really excited about our future in the next 18 months and would love to hear from you.
Amazing. And as you were talking, I was thinking of Shucked, that musical. That was on Broadway. It did really well. But then they closed it. It was a Mike Bosner produced, who might have produced Cats as well.
I think you're right. Okay, I think you're right.
Yeah. But Shucked closed, and I remember his announcement, because the show did really well. Audiences were loving it, but he was just we just can't sustain it. And I'm now thinking back, if we were to go back in time, if you had been involved, I wonder if there was a world in which the audience could have, because they, by the time they got their audience, they were we have to close. And it was
that's right.
They had just had another month, another 2 months. That show probably could have gone on and on because people were loving it so much. All right, Jess, this was amazing. You were amazing. Thank you for this.
This was so fun.
And thank you.
I'm so glad to know you now. Let's do it more. Let's talk more.
That's it for this week's episode. What a whirlwind. My big takeaway was Jess is a theater person first, but has transformed themselves into a business person. And she taught herself everything. There was so much business terminology just thrown around. P&L, product fit, lead generator, white labeling, nil rights, shareholder primacy, mechanisms, efficiencies, B Corp, trust-owned nonprofit, L4, flywheel. My goodness, those were English words, but they are not ones that I use when we're talking about lighting design, certainly. And I think that it's a great illustration of the different vocabularies and mindsets between creative labor and the business creators. And I admire Jess blending the two. My other takeaway was something Jess mentioned rather briefly, and that was that seeing something digitally first, you are 3 to 5 times more likely going to go see that in person. And I can testify that on a non-digital level, in that I once went to see Chicago on Broadway because I had seen the tour. Now, I know that's not digital, but I only went to go see it on Broadway because I had seen it already. But I have seen media of Slava's Snow Show, and I've never seen it in person, but because I've seen the digital version, I so want to go see that show. Now, I'm making a big point of this because during the interview, I mentioned a little show called Pookie Goes Grenading that I'm helping produce. And when I say produce, it's just a friend helping out a friend. And it's producing in the nonprofit way, which is seeking donations because there is no intention of breaking even or making a profit because of limited seats and the fact that we couldn't or wouldn't demand a $150 ticket price. But Jess is reminding me, use social media in our process. So having the director or performers or creative team document some of their process leading up to it, or, maybe the stage manager and the crew documenting their startup or shutdown processes. Because if somebody sees it, they could be 3 to 5 times more likely to leave their apartment and go see the show. And the cynic in me is thinking, Ethan, yeah, that's great, but that's a lot of energy and requests of people to put things on social media. And you are correct, but people are posting on social media anyway, so why not brainstorm how they could do it and include our little show? So I'm saying this using our little show as an example, but I'm also saying it out loud for all the things that we are invested in, right? We have to post about it, make it accessible so that other people can be involved too, right? Because that's what living is all about. So if you're doing something, why not share it? Because that makes it accessible to other people. By the way, I do not want you to donate to Pookie Goes Grenading, but if you are curious, there is a link in the show notes to it. It's a wonderful team, and they are all working on stipends because they love the director. I think that's what it boils down to. So the director is Haley Rice. David Abb is the lighting designer, and the lead producer is Elena Sartor, who is an actor, but I met them when they were doing gigs as a stage manager. So that's Pookie Goes Grenading, and I'm sure I'll mention it again as we work through raising the money and getting it on its feet. We have the rights secured, so it will be happening. But the reason I bring it up here is that it's relevant because it's such a little show, but the cost of putting on any sort of theater is just crazy. So it's like Jess's point of cost disease. This is a huge problem for theater. It costs so much money to produce because there are so many people involved in even a single person show that the labor alone, even if there is no set or costumes, like just the labor alone of all the pieces make it expensive to produce. All right, that is what I have for this week. I cannot thank Jess enough. I am so impressed because she is that blend of director, choreographer, and business owner. And I thought that you had to abandon one in order to do the other. But Jess can speak both of those languages and do both of those things. Oh, and a wonderful Patreon update this week. I get to welcome 2 new patrons. And I'm not going to say your names because I don't want to dox you, but I appreciate your support. You made my entire week this week. And actually, I also had an incredible week for the Patreon because I actually have 3 episodes up there already. So next week's, which is AI and theater design, that's a round table. And then the next episode after that is an interview with St. Louis-based set designer Seth Howard. And then an episode we recorded yesterday, AI and sound design. So those are 3 early episodes I have up there. Okay, and my last little thing is that last week we talked with Christopher Kriz, sound designer, and we mentioned cold calling theaters looking for work. So I sort of did that tonight. I was putting the show notes together and I saw a show that looked interesting. So I clicked to read about it, and the director is somebody I've worked with before. So now that's not a cold email, but the show's only a few months away. I am sure that they have their lighting designer, but I sent the email anyway and I said, hey, if you need a lighting designer for that show, looks pretty cool, would love to do it. And that's something that I don't always do or often do. And certainly since I had Theo, I have been trying to freelance less, and hence why I'm a teacher now, right? Trying to work less. So it's actually even more rare for me to be seeking work, but sometimes I panic in the middle of the night. Anyway, I'm saying this to mention to you, hey, email somebody, ask for work. If you're wanting a certain amount of work or a certain type of work, go ahead and send that email. It doesn't have to be cold. It can be somebody you know. So here's your encouragement to go email somebody and just directly ask for work. Okay, now I'm finished. Thank you so much for listening. Looking forward to doing this again. That is it for today. Until next time, break a leg.
Thank you for listening to Artistic Finance, where we interview successful artists, leaders, and investors to help educate and inspire the creative community. To access our show notes and resources, go to artisticfinance.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any decision, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Artistic Finance. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.